Hi Yogi, and welcome to another Slow Flow with me, Oceana. In this particular class, we'll again be looking at another of the 5 main pairs of meridian lines that run through the body according to traditional Chinese medicine. And today particularly we'll be focusing on the heart meridian, and the heart in TCM is considered a yin organ, and it's often commonly paired with the small intestine, which represents more of a yang energy in the body. So the heart, similar to Western medicine in TCM, it's considered to warm the blood and then circulate that warm blood around the body, whereas maybe slightly unusually in TCM, because the heart meridian also connects to the tongue, the heart also is considered to govern our ability to speak, not just clearly, but also honestly, so to really express ourselves truthfully. The small intestine, on the other hand, is mostly concerned with sort of separating out what is useful to us and what is not useful to us. So when we're ingesting food, the small intestine will sort of separate out the nutrients that it's going to take on board for the physical body to nourish ourselves, and then it eliminates anything that's part of that food that isn't going to serve us well and removes it from the body. So both really important organs to sort of give a little bit of attention to through applying acupressure in our physical yoga practice, particularly as we head towards the yin postures later on. In terms of props, I will highly recommend that today you grab yourself 2 of these yoga bricks, and if you don't have them, I'm going to link a video here for you that's going to show you how to easily substitute them with household items that you hopefully will have somewhere lying around. We will make a start in a seated position, so once you've gathered everything you need, join me there. So if you've arrived in a seated position and you're noticing that your spine is slightly rounding back, then do support the sitting bones. So in my case, I've got some bricks here and I'm going to slide one of these underneath my hips. Otherwise, you could roll up the back of your yoga mat and sit on the roll, or you could have some pillows or blankets to support yourself. And now as you sit a little bit taller and elevate the hips, usually for most of us, that just allows the spine to support itself a little bit more comfortably in an upright position. We will start either with the right shin crossed in front of the left, or if you prefer to have your ankles in one line, again, you're going to have the right ankle in front of the left to begin. Let your hands just briefly rest on top of the knees or thighs. Let the shoulders soften. And if you can, close the eyes. Otherwise, just let the eyes be a little bit softer. Shift your body weight a few times between the left and right side of your hips. So you're going from one sitting bone to the other. And eventually find that perfect spot in between both where you feel really supported. And have a little roll forwards and back through the pelvis. So again, noticing whether today you've got a little bit more of a tendency to lean back or sway forwards, and eventually sort of settle on what you perceive to be the center. Now, as you find that perfect grounding and balance and support in the seat of your body, see if the spine could lengthen all the way from the core body towards the crown of the head, lifting, and at the same time allowing the shoulders to become a little bit heavier and softer. On an inhale, blink the eyes open, let the arms travel out and all the way over your head, interlacing the fingertips above you. Roll the palms of your hands towards the ceiling and really soften the elbows so that you can spin the thumbs up as the pinky fingers draw a little bit more towards the floor beneath you. Now, keep the shoulders soft as you start to straighten the elbows, and at the same time, find a little bit more length through the center of the body, reaching up. Take a few deep rounds of breath, really expanding the sides of the ribs as you breathe in. And gently release the hands palms facing away from each other as you bend the elbows. Really draw the shoulder blades towards the spine. Interlace the hands behind you. Roll the shoulders back and take a deep inhale. Lift through the front of the chest, maybe even look up briefly, opening through the front of the throat. From there, rise back to center and bring your hands all the way across towards the right hip or the right side of the waist. Now, you could stay here, especially if there's any neck pain. Otherwise, maybe draw your right ear a little bit closer towards the shoulder blade and let your left shoulder really soften away from the ear. So we're really creating a lot of space and a little bit of a stretch along the left side of the neck, maybe all the way into the front of your left shoulder, upper arm, possibly all the way down into the elbow and forearm. Gently as you inhale, lift the head, come back into center, release the arms. If you're sitting on a block or any kind of props, just briefly remove them. From here, we'll uncross the legs and plant the feet in front of us. We might have the hands underneath the knees here, and slowly we'll shift our body weight back into the sitting bones, seeing if we can float the toes off the floor. Maybe bring the shin bones parallel to the ground, possibly floating the arms either side of our boat Navasana. Maybe you're even straightening the legs and smiling at your big toes wherever you are so that you can soften your facial muscles. Let the shoulders draw a little bit more towards the back, softening away from the ears again to find that length through the neck. Finding our last 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 second here. Eventually, as we come back to sitting, we'll have the left shin in front of the right or the left ankle in front of the right. And if you sat on a block, do the same thing here on the second side, just to make sure we keep things pretty even. We'll start by lifting the arms out and over the head. As we interlace the hands here above us, we're going to move one pinky finger over. So I often say if it feels strange, then you're sort of in the right place. Bend the elbows, so really rotate your palms up so the thumbs are drawing a little bit more towards the ceiling and the pinky fingers are drawing towards the floor. And from there, let the shoulders stay soft, but start to straighten the elbows and reach a little bit more through the sides of the waist. Really find a little bit of length through the torso. Catch your last few rounds of breath here. Take some deep, deep breaths. And gently, as you release, let the hands come behind you. Again, find that unusual interlace behind the back of the body. Take a deep inhale, open through the front of the body. If there's no neck issues, you can let the head roll back and open the front of the throat as well. And eventually here, as you come back to center, let the hands come towards the left hip. So you're really drawing that right hand across. Maybe softening the left ear towards the shoulder on the same side. And then really dropping the right shoulder away to intensify that stretch along the right side of the neck, the front of the right shoulder, into the upper arm, forearm, maybe through the elbow. Allowing the body to gradually soften into that stretch. And on your next inhale, rising back, blinking the eyes open to release the hands and again, remove anything you're sat on. If you do have your bricks, then place them at the back of your yoga mat on the shortest or medium setting like I've got here. We'll shimmy the legs out from underneath us and come into a tabletop position. So we'll have the hands underneath the shoulders, the knees under the hips to begin with. Moving through a couple of cat-cows here, the toes tuck under as we lift through the tailbone, arching the spine and possibly even looking up. On an exhale, pressing the tops of the feet down, rounding the spine towards the ceiling, maybe looking towards our belly button. Inhale to tuck the toes under, lifting through the front of the body, looking up. As you exhale, pushing the floor away to round all the way towards the sky above you. Making this our last full round, moving with the breath here. And the next time that you come back from that rounded position of the spine, we'll meet somewhere in the center, so somewhere between these two postures, and we'll tuck under the toes again. This time, as you inhale, lift your right arm up towards the ceiling, expand the chest and bend at the elbow to bring the hand behind the head. As you exhale, bring your top elbow and reach it all the way towards the bottom thumb. As you inhale, expand and lift through the front of the body. Exhale to release the elbow towards the thumb. Last time here with the breath, open it up and reach your right fingertips towards the ceiling. Now, just a couple times, pulse your top hand behind you. So you're reaching it a little bit more towards the left side of the room. And we'll do our last 3, 2, 1 pulses here. From there, sliding the right hand underneath the left arm, reaching as far across as we can to come in to thread the needle. And you might bend your left elbow enough so that you can come onto the right side of the head and come onto the left fingertips. Really optional, but some of you might also like to straighten your left leg back, which gives you a little bit more support here and allows you to possibly slide a little bit more on top of your right shoulder to look up. Finding your last few moments to breathe here. And gently, gently, if you've lifted your left leg, bend the knee, support yourself to unravel. And we'll do all of that on the second side. I'll briefly turn myself around so that you can see that properly. We'll start again with our cat-cow. So toes tuck under as we lift the chest. We arch forwards. On the exhale, pressing the tops of the feet down, rounding upwards towards the sky. On the inhale, lifting through the front of the body. And on the exhale, pushing the floor away to round. Last movement here, flowing with the breath as you inhale to lift and exhale to press through the hands. As you come back into your regular tabletop, start by lifting the left arm up towards the ceiling, bend at the elbow and bring the hand behind the head. As you exhale, bring that top elbow towards the opposite thumb. Inhale to lift and open the chest towards the sky above you. 2 more here, moving with the breath. Exhale to release down, and as you reach your top arm up this time, expand the hand towards the ceiling and pulse the top hand a few times behind you. Catch your last breath here for your last 3, 2, 1 pulses. And from there, take the top hand, thread it all the way towards the right hand side, maybe bending the right elbow enough so that you can come onto the left shoulder, possibly all the way onto the left ear. And if that's worked and you feel fairly steady, quite supported here, you might tent your right fingertips and possibly straighten the right leg back so that you can push a little bit more into that bottom hand and roll onto the back of the shoulder, possibly onto the back of the head. So that you look up a little bit more and come a little bit deeper into that twist for the last few moments here. Slowly, slowly let your right knee come down, reverse your way out of this to come back into a tabletop position. And from here, we'll find our way into our first downward dog. So we'll tuck under the toes and push the sitting bones up and back. Having the knees generously bent, you can have a little walk through the feet, just easing into the pose, maybe really shimmying from one hip into the other to sort of find a little bit of a side bend through your downward dog as well. Eventually, take a little moment to find stillness in your downward dog. Tuck your heels behind the toes and separate the feet so they are hip distance apart. Really push into your index and thumb so that you can spin the insides of your elbows forward and find a little bit more length through the spine. Really think about lengthening and reaching your tailbone towards the ceiling above you. At the same time, draw the crown of the head towards the floor. So you're sort of moving the spine in two opposite directions here to find length. Gently bring the knees to the floor. And if you haven't already, then set up your bricks or your substitute bricks at the back of the yoga mat on a medium setting. We'll come through a moving asymmetrical camel here. So start with the bricks a little bit taller. Bring your left hand to the left brick. Support yourself there, and as you inhale, reach your right arm up all the way over the head. You're reaching it across to the opposite side of your yoga mat and maybe pushing through the hips, starting to lift the hips all the way forward towards the front of the mat. And we're staying a little bit softer here at the beginning. So again, bring the hips down, take it to the other side, let the right hand come to the right brick, let the left arm reach up and over the head, and find just a gentle lift through the sitting bones. As you come back to the second side, maybe lifting a little bit taller through the sit bones, really reaching the hips forward if you feel ready for that through the spine, and taking it to the second side, lifting up as you inhale to unfurl the spine. As you come back here to the first side, if you feel ready, you can always drop the bricks a little bit lower and come a little bit deeper into that pose. Last time here, moving to the second side. And as you come down, come back into that kneeling position, slide the hands forward, tuck under the toes from your tabletop, and push the heels away to find your way into a high plank where the shoulders are on top of the wrists and the heels are pressing back with the hips in one line from the shoulders. Now, drop both of your heels to the right. Some of you might prefer a supported side plank with the bottom knee on the floor. Otherwise, keep the bottom leg lifted and reach your left arm up towards the ceiling for full Vashisthasana, really pressing through the bottom hip. Now, from here, gently turn to face forward and bring your whole left forearm onto the ground. Let the heels drop to the left and reach your right arm up towards the ceiling for a low side plank. Maybe some of you might like to step the top foot behind you, landing on the ball of that foot to spin the hips up towards the ceiling, and maybe let the top hand rest behind the head for support in a low wild thing. Slowly reverse and find your way onto the forearms in a low plank position. Briefly let the hips come down, open the front of the chest, and from there push the floor away to come back into your low plank. Lift up through the front of the body and walk the feet into a dolphin pose. So the knees here can be really, really generously bent. You're really pushing through the forearms and maybe having a few dolphin dips where the nose comes forward between the thumbs and then you push back through the shoulders to lift the chest towards your knees. Last time here. Exhale to come forward and press back. Lower the knees gently. Push the sitting bones back through the hands to find a little moment, a little rest in child's pose. Maybe you can bring the backs of the hands towards one another and have a little sway from side to side to give the wrists a little stretch. And eventually we'll do all of that on the second side. So preparing ourselves, getting ourselves a little bit hyped up, because of course, anytime we do a lot of upper body strength, it's quite hard work and we really have to motivate ourselves. So when you're ready, pull out the hands at the front. Come into your tabletop position. And again, from there, tucking under one leg, then the other. Find your high plank. Drop the heels to the left this time. Again, choose if you're going to bring the bottom knee down or keep the leg lifted and let the right arm float up towards the ceiling. Lift through that bottom hip, one last breath. And then drop the top forearm all the way to the ground. Let the heels come to the right. Reach the left arm up towards the sky. Maybe stay here. Maybe again, you're stepping the ball of your top foot behind you, reaching up through the hips, the chest, and allowing your top arm to come over the head and support the back of the neck so that you can really open through the front of the body in your forearm wild thing. And slowly here we'll reverse our movements, coming onto the front of the body into our low plank, releasing the hips down very briefly, just to push the floor away with the elbows and expand through the front of the body, allowing the shoulders to soften, and then separating the forearms so they're shoulder distance apart, pressing the floor away, tucking under the toes, and slowly peeling the front of the body away from the ground. So really working against gravity here to come back into our low plank, and from there walk the hands in, walk the feet in rather than the hands. And you might step the feet together here a little bit different. You could stay in your dolphin pose. Again, you might choose to have the knees really generously bent. Some of you might like to lift the right foot and then have a little bounce through the ball of the bottom foot, maybe a couple of hops, finding your body weight slowly shifting into the forearms. Maybe you're going to change sides and do all of that on the second side. So having a few hops, maybe just testing that slow shift of body weight into the forearms, and then bringing the top foot down, slowly lowering the knees and taking a little rest in child's pose, shimmying the hips from side to soften down. Now slowly from here we'll gradually make our way into Sphinx pose, so we will come to lie all the way on our stomach. My personal suggestion would be that you take one of your yoga bricks with you. Personally, I really enjoy supporting my forehead on a brick in Sphinx. So you can sort of slither your way onto the belly when you're ready, sliding forward. And if you know that you have any sort of lower back compression or you have dealt with lower back pain in the past, my suggestion would be that you play a little bit with the placement of your forearms and elbows. So the further your forearms are away from the torso, the more you're flattening out the curve in the lower back. And the closer your elbows are to you or to each other, the sort of stronger that back bend is going to become. Now, if you're using a brick, you'll want to place that on the highest, medium or lowest setting underneath the forehead. And I personally prefer to take it quite a bit higher so that it really allows me to open through the front of the chest. And I'll be working a little bit deeper into the upper back here. So you want to place the brick really sort of between the eyebrows so that you can feel a little bit of pressure through the forehead, and make sure that the brick is fully supported by the floor. And then let the shoulders soften. Adjust your forearms if that's helpful. And really take a moment to sort of find a good position for yourself to rest in and come into perfect stillness. And when you arrive, really let the attention travel towards your breathing. So notice that connection into the ground and how that shifts as you breathe in. And on the exhale, sort of exploring how the front of the body moves against your yoga mat or against the floor beneath you. How does that contact with the floor shift as you continue to breathe? And seeing if you can really feel the breath in the back of the body as well as the front. So possibly noticing the floating lungs at the back of the sort of mid-spine, feeling how the lower back and mid-spine are expanding, how the lower part of your ribs at the back of the body is lifting as you breathe in and softening down as you exhale. And finally, you might bring a little bit of attention to the legs as well. So for some of us, it'll be quite obvious that one leg feels a little bit more grounded, a little bit more willing to give into that pull of gravity than the other. And for me, actually, the thing that I'm noticing more than anything else is that one hip feels a little bit higher than the other. So you might just take stock of which side feels different. And if that's the case, and you've sort of noticed where particularly the sensations are sort of different from left to the right leg, then see if as you exhale, you can ask that part of yourself to give a little bit more weight to the floor, to really release into the pull of gravity as you exhale. And for the last few moments here, if you do want to work a little bit deeper, then you could lift your head away from the brick and remove that to one side. You might walk your hands all the way to the very, very edges of your yoga mat, or possibly even wider than that, and start to lift the elbows away from the floor to come into seal pose. Now for seal, I like to give myself a really good base here to support the torso. And I actually like to turn the fingertips quite far away from each other. So the thumbs are pointing directly forward and the arms are really, really wide, so that almost forms a sort of triangle between the center of my chest and my two arms. And then I really feel like I don't have to put too much effort into holding myself here, especially if I spin the insides of my elbows forward. And I can let the head hang to give the back of the neck a little bit of a stretch, or you can keep the head in line with the spine. And if at any point, of course, you feel a sensation or a pulling or pinching in the lower back, you can always walk your hands further forward just to reduce that curve in the back of the body. And possibly, as you stay for the last few moments here, really think about softening the lower part of the ribs towards the ground. So taking that back bend a little bit further into the upper back instead of the lower back. And gently, gently bend the elbows to bring the chest all the way to the floor. Bring the hands underneath the shoulders and push into the hands to lift yourself into tabletop. And we'll come into child's pose. Now, if child's pose is very comfortable for you, then you might like to really round yourself a little bit closer towards the knees. So you could walk the hands towards the back of the mat. You might really round the forehead in. And possibly if you can reach all the way there, you might even catch the soles of the feet, and that allows you to pull the front of the body a little bit closer, really drawing and rounding the spine to give yourself a deep, deep counter stretch, maybe having a little sway from side to side, rolling the front of the head across the yoga mat. And from there, slowly rounding through the spine to come up. And we'll come back onto the front of the body for a prone shoulder stretch. So if you come onto the belly, we'll start with the left arm coming out in one line from the shoulder. If you're sort of struggling for space today, you can bend the elbow and come into cactus arms. Plant your right hand underneath its own shoulder, and from there roll all the way onto the left side of your hip. You can rest the left ear on the floor. And if you want to work a little bit deeper, then you could step your right foot behind you, landing it on the floor. Maybe over time, You can bend your your left knee and bring that foot to the ground as well, so that slowly as you stay a little bit longer, the lower back will move a little bit closer towards the ground beneath you. And maybe if the right fingertips feel quite light, you could reach that hand around and see if you can catch your fingertips behind you, interlacing the hands. And whichever version you're in, most of us will have quite strong sensations through the front of the left shoulder here, all the way into the left side of the neck. And maybe as we stay a little bit longer, those muscle tissues start to soften and release, providing a little bit more space for us to move into, to drop the right hip a little bit closer towards the floor behind us. And twisting a little bit deeper. Make this your last few rounds of breath. See if you can really let the exhalation soften you down. And slowly reverse your movement. So if you caught the hands behind you, gently release the fingertips. Bring your right hand in front of the chest. Slowly unravel yourself. Come all the way onto the belly, and we'll simply change sides, but I'm going to keep facing towards you. So turning myself briefly all the way around. We'll have the right arm out. Left arm comes underneath its own shoulder. And slowly from there, we push into the left hand to come onto the right hip. You could keep the legs stacked one on top of the other, or some of you again might want to step the left foot behind you. And possibly from there, if you're quite close to resting on the back of your hips, then you might bend your right knee as well and plant that foot to the floor. And if that's happened, and again you still feel comfortable, then you could see if you can catch the hands behind you and interlace the fingertips. And once that's happened, making sure that you're resting the right side of the head, allowing the ear to be soft and relaxed towards the floor. Allowing the breath to gradually settle, and see if you could really keep the breath quite even through the rib cage, expanding into that more lateral way of breathing where you're really finding the breath in the sides of the lungs. Gradually over the next few rounds of your breath, seeing if that top left hip could move a little bit closer towards the floor. And you might find a little bit more space, a little bit more relief through the right shoulder. Gently here, we'll release the hands first, bringing the left hand in front, rolling all the way back onto the belly, reversing our movements, and from there slowly pushing up into a tabletop position, just to actually slide our feet out from underneath us and make our way into Savasana. So you can have your legs as wide as the yoga mat. You can have the knees bent if you prefer, of course, or if you want to use a bolster underneath the knees. Have a little bit of space between the arms and the torso, maybe wiggling the shoulders underneath. Rolling the head a few times from side to side, really finding just this perfect resting position and moving anything away from the body that might become distracting. And from there, allowing yourself a little bit of time just to notice how the back of the body is connecting into the floor. So again, if just one side of the shoulder blades feels a little bit different than the other, that's something to really pay attention to and notice. If you can let the weight of the body connect a little bit more evenly into the ground over time. And for a few moments, just allow yourself a little bit of silence, a little bit of stillness to really feel the sensations, the after effects of your yoga practice seeping in all the way through the skin and the muscles, through to the ligaments and the bones, deep down into our breath and our emotional body, our mind, allowing everything to be soothed by these last few moments of stillness. Slowly let your breath become a little bit deeper, a little bit more expansive. Let your fingers and toes move a little bit from side to side. And eventually here, bring one knee at a time towards your chest. Hugging the knees in with your arms. Have a little rock from side to side to massage the back of the body against the floor beneath you. And from there, let the right arm come all the way over your head and roll onto the right side of the body with the left arm supporting you when you arrive. Take a few rounds of breath, maybe even close your bottom nostril and breathe through the left side a few times to make that side a bit more dominant again at the end of your practice. Eventually push into your left hand and rise all the way up to a comfortable seated position. You might still keep the eyes closed here. And we'll join the palms of our hands in front of the chest, bowing the forehead towards our fingertips. And using this final moment of class to really extend a little bit of gratitude to ourselves for showing up in the first place, which I always find just the most difficult part of our yoga practice is getting there. And maybe you're also planting a sankalpa, a good intention for yourself, or you're sending it to somebody else in your life who might need it a little bit more than you do. And this is where we'll close our practice. Namaste, yogis, and thank you so much as always for joining me on your yoga mat. It's always such a pleasure. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions, do drop me a line down below. I'm always really thrilled to hear from you. And of course, if you like the video, do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and a super duper kind gesture, of course, is always to share this channel or this video with a friend of yours who maybe already is a fellow yogi or who you're trying to convert to the yoga side of life. If you want to find me anywhere else in the world of social media, then all of those links will be in the video description down below. And hopefully I will see you back on your yoga mat very soon. And once again, thank you so much for joining me today. Bye, yogi.